by supporting NATO forces. And then they had no choice to hand over the daughters to them. And it was more than a family's child.
So you mentioned the fact that the problem is actually a relatively recent phenomenon. I mean, it's increased since the NATO forces have come in. Was there a feeling among the families themselves that the West or the NATO forces were somehow to blame for it?
Unfortunately, young people did not have this kind of experience before, or the farmers. And it's happened since 1 decade, exactly. And even the price of the opium or heroin increased, and lots of farmers these days, they growing poppies of opium, and they have no choice, as they say. And if you go to remote areas in Afghanistan, you can see fields of poppies around the country. But people or farmers claiming that government itself has a connection with them. And as you know, there is a corruption in government, corruption within corruption. So probably, or I'm pretty sure that rank of the government, they have handled these kind of things. They're supporting the smugglers.
So Razim, one of the fathers of the families that you interviewed, said a couple of times that he felt that the traffickers are much more dangerous and powerful than the Taliban. Was that a feeling that was uniformly held with all the other families? Could you expand on that?
As you said, Razim mentioned that, and I was thinking maybe Taliban more powerful than the smugglers. That's why I managed to interview one of the Taliban commanders on that region, and he mentioned that in another way they have their own group and their own interest, and Taliban has their own interest. And when they're going to fight against NATO, they join each other, and the rest of things they have their own way, and most of things, their bases or their big bosses in Pakistan, they're located in Pakistan, and they operate from there. And they're using some Afghan poor people to find the farmers who are poor and who have land, and they provide advance money. And if you have more lands, they give you more money. So it's a start from $2,000 up to $40,000, $60,000.
In one of your previous films, Afghanistan Behind Enemy Lines, you said that your camera was your gun. Do you think that exposing this issue can help to combat it? And do you see any other hope or any ways of moving forward with this issue?
I was in the situation at that time to say that my camera is my gun, so I had no choice. And this film also, the places where I went was all out of control of the government. The government had no control of those areas. But through connections, through people, through middle guys, I managed to contact the Taliban saying I'm coming this region and doing some investigating things, and please allow this. So once they allowed me, I started working and I went to those regions. But thankfully, I didn't face to some dangerous points as you saw on the dancing on the behind enemy. Yeah, it was dangerous every minute, every second, because there was traffickers, smugglers, there was Taliban, insurgents, and on the other hand, the government. They also was against this kind of film, and they didn't want to show their weakness point. So that's why I had lots of enemies, Taliban, the smugglers, and the government.
And you have so much experience of filming in Afghanistan and the media landscape. Do you feel like the media landscape is changed? Is it changing, and how is it changing with allowing you to film there, or that changing?
Yes, it has changed a lot, and I should say that Afghanistan is going to forget after 2014, once the NATO pull out their troops from Afghanistan. They're going to be like Iraq, it's my opinion. But in Afghanistan, there's from every country, you can see some 2-3 organizations. They're working for media, and lots of people working as a journalist over there. But the government trying to stop them by exposing something. Like the last few months, the government put on, they issued a policy on journalism, especially on journalists, to not broadcast anything who show that Taliban is power, or if there is some activities from the Taliban, don't show these kind of things or don't report. So that's why they're trying to keep quiet for journalists, or to not let say the truth or to expose these stories.
And you touched on this when Jamie was interviewing one of the NATO leaders, and the local government officials. Do you feel like the drug smugglers? Is there some kind of relationship there with certain local officials, or do you not find any evidence of that at all?
All the officials, Afghan government, they knows what's going on. I interviewed with a regional police chief, and he also mentioned this, and somehow he didn't put on the film. He said every day 8 police are dying fighting against the smugglers. So this was something he said that. But most of them not going to admit on camera. As you say, if you notice that guy, the official guy, while he was saying officially we don't know anything, he was sweating. So it shows the truth. And before I came to that question, he said yes, the farmer has no money and they are poor, they have to take that money. And once I asked the question, the direct question, he denied. So this is all the government like that, there's no connection.
And do you think the situation may improve after the West withdraws, or do you see any other way of improving the situation at all?
Unfortunately not. If NATO can't do anything, it's money raising from all over the world to Afghanistan, from all over the world. And now they're going to leave Afghanistan, and the money will also stop, and they will not get that amount of money to build the country. But unfortunately, Afghan government did not spend the money on the right way. They should spend firstly on education, rather than making nice buildings and taking money for their own interest. So they did not spend the money in the right way. So that's why I can't see any bright future, and the situation will get worse and worse.
I'm really sorry to hear that. So just a few general questions for Tracy about the film. How did you find this different from the other Clover Films series of documentaries? What really stood out from this production?
It's hard to say, because for those of you that sort of know our Clover Films repertoire, we go out looking for the strong stories, the human interest stories, the ones that hopefully will make a difference. I mean, a lot of our films are screened in festivals worldwide, and we've won awards like the UN festival, and only by getting the film out there and actually drawing attention to matters like this do we hope to have an impact. In terms of what's different, it's hard to really pinpoint, but I think it's the real sort of emotional stories about the girls. We really focus on the girls in this film, and unfortunately we still haven't heard any news about the 2 girls. We do follow up with our stories, and
And how do you keep in touch with these families once you're out of the country?
It's all through pixels which I have in the field, and I have contact with them every 2-3 weeks, or even with my pixels. If anything happens, he call me. So I have 4 or 5 pixels around the country just on that story.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to open up to the floor for questions. So do put your hand up and we'll get you a microphone. Gentleman at the front.
Hi, this is Tracy. You mentioned about the film having an impact. I just wanted to know what impact you wanted this film to have and kind of how you hope that impact might materialise.
Well, if you notice at one point, we only found one shelter, and it's throughout the film we spoke many times about how they just don't talk about it. That girls don't. I mean, the girls are almost sort of less important, and we don't get to see a lot of in the sort of Western media. We don't get to see a lot of what we show on these films. So it's also sort of highlighting maybe where the NGOs aren't focusing their attention, and it's we'll try and get the film shown to whoever can help out there.
What's the next step in that sense? Is this the premiere?
Yes.
So what do you do now? Who do you show?
The films, well, obviously we're here with TBF International, who are distributing the film. A lot of our films are shown, or most films are shown worldwide. I don't think I can even count the countries where Dancing Boys has been shown. Yeah, and again, through all sort of human rights festivals around the world as well.
So, just to step in there, at the moment, this is very early days for the film, honestly, as this is the preview, but it will be shown already in Finland, Sweden, Poland and Portugal, and Israel as a start. So that's the kind of start of the international outreach that we're doing at TBF International to, get the film seen in as many countries across the world as possible.
It's also been shown on Frontline TBF, which is the number one documentary channel in the States.
Lady in the back.
Yeah, I've kind of got 2 questions actually. The first one, I mean, this must have been a really sort of emotional roller coaster for you both to take, and Jamie, with sort of talking to the families, etc. Did you ever think that by being there, you were almost setting a trail for? Were you worried about exposing the location of the girls and the families, or leading anyone to them at any point?
It was one of the heartbreaking stories, especially if you've been there. You can feel it, yes. I don't think if there's any dangerous point for those families or girls, because they are already in run of those smackers, and they don't care about these kind of things. But in another point, I think it's much better for them to show something in the world. Probably they will be safer. Once they expose, we believe, then they will be safer than this time. So that's why I am thinking it's by exposing this, we will help them basically. But they are really in that.
And I guess the second question was to both of you as well. Tracy, you were saying that there's quite a few things that you don't actually get to put in the films. With a story as strong as this and as strong as your other ones are, how do you choose what to put in? I know, almost impossible question, but...
We have lots of material, and for Frontline PBS we made a 30 minutes short version, and they were in a hurry and we had to make it really quick. And for international version, we changed the script, Jamie changed the script many times. We we have lots of footage, like we have the other shoot, we have the prisoner, two prisoner drug smugglers. They were caught by Afghan police. I went to the jail, and one was Iranian guy, and he was caught with 90 kilogram heroin, and the other one Afghan. So we try to put them in, we put them, and we pull off again with some reasons with maybe Jimmy.
Well, I think at the end of the day, we had so much footage, and it began to pull away from the actual story about the girls, and that's what we kind of really had to focus on.
Three quick questions. Is there an estimate? Is there an estimate? Is there an estimate of the number of actual smugglers? First one. Second one, the farmers mentioned that the pressure is on them from the poverty point of view to start growing opium. But is there any actual other coercion by the smugglers? Third part of that was, there was mention each time of these large sums of money very often being used to buy land. So who is selling the land?
The farmers who has experience on growing opium, they gave more money. For instance, the smuggler came for this old farmers. Like previously also he bought something from this farmer and say, okay, I'll give you 40,000, for instance, $40,000, and you get more land and grow poppies for us. And the other, they give the money, if you have less land, they give you less money. They check your land first, and then they give you an advance money. And this was not from now, this was continued from hundreds of years ago. It was the same system. They were coming from Pakistan or any other countries or Afghanistan, provide an advance money for Afghan for the farmers, and they have to grow poppies. But in this occasion, when they grow, and government came, police came, and with the help of local forces, and they destroyed their poppies, and they have to repay that, or they have to give their daughters, which smugglers decided that.
And just the first question there, how many smugglers do you think there were? Is there an estimate? Do you
Nobody knows the number.
Everyone seems to admit it, officially.
There is no border, as you may know about, between Afghanistan and Pakistan. There is no border. And even the people, it's difficult to recognize it's Afghani or Pakistani. So as the Talib also mentioned, most of them are Pakistan, and they came from Pakistan, and they do this. And they're familiar with the area, they're familiar with the farmers. So nobody knows the numbers. It's really difficult to estimate how many.
Did that cover?
Well, they're just based on meaning on whether there was coercion to start growing opium rather than coercion to sell the daughters or whatever on the loan.
Quite often the smugglers would, by giving, we did have, I think it was one of the cases where, in order for the money, they said you have to grow opium. They are, there's some form of
they're forces, yeah.
Yeah.
In some occasions, they're forcing you to grow.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily that they're actually growing it for the money, they're actually taking money, and the smugglers are often forcing them to grow it.
On that subject, we have another material we didn't put on the film, on the first thing, which lots of farmers, they escaped from their villages. They were forcing by smugglers to grow opium, and they escaped from their lands. And they came to the government who wanted to help them. They gave some shelter, something like that. And I interviewed those farmers. They saying, we are just struggling, there is no food, no water, nothing. It's better to go back to that village and grow poppies or opium.
So if a farmer says, no, I won't grow opium, I don't want your 20,000, and he wants just to grow food, he will be forced to grow opium. Is that what you're saying?
Most of them, they're forced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The native miner that you interviewed, he was at pains to point out that they provided protection to the guys chopping down the opium fields. But do they, I mean, the girls that are being taken are from those same communities. Do they protect those chopping down the opium fields and then turn a blind eye, or is there corruption, or do they just leave? What kind of happens at that?
NATO forces, they just protect Afghan forces just for a day or two when they go to that region. And the rest of the days, they can't go there basically. If they wanted to go on that region, they have to go thousands people, which cost lots of money. And once they get there, they just destroy and they came back and they never go there. Or even, I could say, they have no courage to go to that region. So, because government or NATO, nobody can do anything on them. They are taken, and nobody knows where they are. Even their family, they don't know where they are or where they live.
Any more questions? No? Okay.
I was just about, you mentioned this issue of abduction of children to repay debts is widespread, but I wondered if there was any way of measuring the amount of farmers who have been rendered destitute by the policy on drugs in the first hand, and then secondly, if there's any way of measuring the amount of farmers who have then had their children abducted to repay their debts. Like, yeah, do you have any data on it, effectively?
The children abducted to.
How many farmers have been rendered destitute by this policy of destroying crops on the one hand, and how many of those farmers have had their children abducted? That's what I was.
I don't know if you'll be able to get any official figures, because even in certain parts of Afghanistan, there are no birth records, or if there are any records, there's no actual official records of exactly how many people are even in Afghanistan. So
there's only one way to go village by village to find out, and kind of to do survey, which is very difficult for us to do that, but it's analysis of farmers. Their land was destroyed, and then finally they had to hand over the office. But there are some farmers which their fields are safe, and they were doing their normal things. And
I mean, I feel like I'm being a bit crude here, but are we talking every single farmer who's had all their fields destroyed has lost at least a child?
no,
Like, what are we
the
talking
first,
about?
if you can notice on the film, the first visit which I went to remote areas in the mountain, those regions are safe. Because as you hear the old guy, he said he's 24 years old, and there is no government, no one came here. So those farmers are safe. No one can touch them. But on the south and east of the country, the border of Pakistan, that two region was their properties were destroyed, and they had to give their children.
Just the lady in the middle.
I'm still not quite clear. It's a very moving film with a lot of impact, but I'm still not quite clear. After you've done all that work, what would you like to see happen? If you could wave a wand, if you could talk to world governments, NATO, whoever, and if you'd like to say, please do this, what would you like to see happen? That's one thing. And the other thing is, obviously there's a time in the film, but there's been discussion about whether the poppies could be legitimately bought for their medical uses of the bits of opium that are used throughout the world for medical purposes. Did you consider do you have any views on that?
whilst there's an international pool because most of the heroin production comes from Afghanistan, so it's something that they're taking on board. But I don't think they're looking at the bigger picture as to what is actually happening to the people on the ground. What we've shown in the film.
Basically, 85% of Afghan population lives in the countryside, and those 85% of population, government has no power on them unless they go by force. The rest of the countries belong to the insurgents, the smugglers, and the Taliban. NATO forces plus Afghan government, they have power only in that 15% of the country, which is all the towns. So if they don't have that courageous to go countryside to stop that, or I don't think if they can help any farmers, unless, I don't know, nobody can say the situation, what's going to be happening tomorrow, who will take over, or probably if Taliban take over, maybe they're rid of these kind of problems, or they're become normal, they continue their normal life. But in another hand, no one lives in Afghanistan. I mean that 15% of population, they don't want the Taliban, and which is they are educated and they live in the town. And the rest of the countries, they support the Taliban, they support the insurgents. I don't think, we would love to show the government by showing the film around the world, to say to the government, this is the situation in the remote areas, do something on them. But I don't think this corruption government do anything.
I think in terms of waving a magic wand, Najibullah did mention earlier education being a really, really important forward-moving factor in this, and also essentially eradication of poverty. I mean, it's really a problem of poverty, isn't it?
Education is the key. Afghanistan has been war from last 3 decades because of lack of education. And we were hoped 10 years ago when NATO went into Afghanistan, we were hoped that they invest some money on education, or Afghan government should spend some money on education, which they didn't. And if they would, now we would have a new generation, educated generation, which we don't have it now. And that's why they're listening to others, they're listening to the Taliban, I mean the local people. They don't have their own mind because they are not educated. So this is the problem in Afghanistan, and I don't think if the problem is going to be solved.
The question I want to ask is usually like in strong Afghani or Pathan communities, there's like a tribal order and you have your elders. When something happens within a family, you can usually get, well, either community support or they take vengeance. And I know the smugglers are quite like intense figures that have the villages or the farmers trying to combat them themselves, considering the government won't get involved. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Without involving the government, the smugglers can't do anything?
No, but what I'm asking is kind of family, like just a girl or someone like a family is under threat from the victim.
Yeah, if they come to the government.
They go to the government, but find the tribal elders in that kind of area themselves, not considering the government. Can't they support the farmer or the family to stop the smugglers?
If they would do this, they would kill them immediately.
Okay.
There are people in the police. It's happened a lot in another issues, but they kill them immediately. So that's why even they come to the town, to the cities, they can't do anything over there, and they can't leave their villages. Or how many families should leave their villages? We have only 4 characters or 4 girls, but there's hundreds of these kind of cases, and they can't leave their hometown. They can't go anywhere. If they would go to the police or the police things, immediately they would be killed.
The more documentaries you make, obviously the more well known you are. Is there any chance that local or government official would be less amenable to talking to you, and therefore would affect your documentaries in the future, and how would you combat that? How would you get around that? If it's a negative reflection of the government.
Yeah, the documentaries which I made, the Dancing Boys, the Angelini, it was all against the government's policy. Yeah, as I mentioned, firstly it's corruption government. Secondly, there is 200 groups within the government, and one opposite of another one, and plus they have opposition. But as a journalist, if I go somewhere in Afghanistan, I have to contact one of these groups, which I needed, and they have to support me in the government, I mean. And also, if I would like to go to other region, like insurgent as power on that region, I have to contact through middle guys and explaining that I can go serious, they have to protect me. Of course, if government, they are not together, they are not united, even that 200 groups. If they were together, they would kill me immediately. They don't want to show these kind of things. Even behind the enemy lines, I don't know if you want or not. On that one, you can see our insurgents as they are free to go anywhere in a kilometer away from the government places, and how they can attack on government and things like that. Or the Dancing Boys. I'm sure once the film airs, the Kabul government sent some official police to that region, and they arrested pedophiles. They were really feel shame on that. But but if I go anywhere, I have to protect myself.
Oh, sorry, you've got the microphone. Yeah. I had a quick question. When you were interviewing the 4 farmers who were complaining they couldn't make ends meet by growing wheat, they were saying that under the Taliban, the prices they were getting for the drug weren't as strong as what they were getting now. So, is it better for the farmers that they're getting a better price for their opium now than under the Taliban?
It's better for the farmers, but it's not good for the world. And because the price increased, because lots of places they stopped growing poppies. I mean the areas close to the town, the places where government has access on that villages, they can't grow. Even one of the farmers said we used to grow and now we can't if we grow, government can't grow. But the price increased because of the they growing in the remote areas, and even I think these days more than 95% of heroin made from Afghanistan, and Afghanistan basically supplying more than 95% of the heroin. But in here, imagine NATO soldiers are there, 42 countries involved in Afghanistan and the Afghan war. They went to Afghanistan to bring peace, to do some good for the people, but it's all went opposite. All these army, all these soldiers, all this money is spending on that 15% of the country, and for the 15% of the population. They don't care about the people who lives a village or the rural areas. And it's all because of the corruption.
It's okay, I'll just maybe. One of the elements that I found most shocking about the film was when you went to that village high out in the mountains that I'd never seen a camera before. And you know how they have their own laws, and if a man gets killed or if someone commits a crime, they give them laws, so that's how they are repaid. And the smugglers are obviously taking advantage and abusing this particular culture in their exploits, in their trying to grow drugs to sell abroad. Do you think that this is an element that the governments are ignoring? Do you think it's to do
you know, the fact that the smugglers are getting away with it to a large extent is because it's largely girls and women who are being abused.
When I came to that area, it wasn't easy to get there firstly, and I had to walk 32 hours to get on that rural areas in the mountain. And soldiers and government, they don't want to walk like me. They don't care. They like their life. They don't want to walk. But because of the story, I had to walk. And secondly, off camera, some of those farmers told me that when the harvest time came, an helicopter came here through the government, and they take all of it and pay the farmers, and they go from this region. But in terms of the law, they have their own law. There's no punishment. For instance, I asked one farmer, if you beat somebody, what would be the punishment? What would be the punishment? He said, if the black come, you have to pay $5,000, and there's no prison, there's nothing. You have to pay $5,000 and you are free. Or if you kill somebody, and you have to give 3-4 daughters, or you have to find some girls for other guys, for some lands.
It's disgusting. It's really,
Of
really
course,
disgusting.
of course. That's why I'm saying billions of dollars went to Afghanistan, 42 countries involved in Afghanistan, and what they are doing.
Because the government is, from what you can see, when you spoke to the woman, she didn't even want to talk about it. Now, do you think that this is a problem that is within the government, not just necessarily within the 85% of the countryside, with the country as a whole? Do you think it's a problem?
It's a big problem. The countryside which I went there, even they don't know who is their government, who controlling the country. One was asking me, he said, I hear Zain Shah has been dying, King Zain Shah. King Zain Shah was 40 years ago, he was the king of Afghanistan. He was asking me, I think he was dying. It means they don't have radio, they don't have nothing. They don't know anything about the world, even about their country. They didn't see the vehicle. They don't know what's the vehicle. Yeah. So this is the problem. And hope Afghan government spend some of those money on them and educate them. They don't have school. They have nothing. All are uneducated. And the girls get married at the age of 13 or 14 maximum.
So just following on from that, I think the core of the question was, do you think that the fact that the government is not even admitting what's going on, that increases, it decreases the likelihood of them doing anything because they're not even willing to admit that the problem is somehow taboo?
Of course, government is not going to admit these kind of issues. They're trying to hide as much as they can. But all we need to have some journalists to expose this kind of issues. I'm sure there's lots of horrible things to expose. But Afghan government, they don't like this kind of issues to publish.
Great, well thank you very much. I think that's about time to wrap up. It's getting very warm in here. On behalf of TVF International, I'd just like to thank Tracy and Najibullah for a very candid and enlightening Q&A session and for being here tonight. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the Mosaic Rooms for hosting us, and I believe there are still some drinks and sandwiches, so do stay around for some drinks and sandwiches. Thank you very much.